The View has been one of the most watched top daytime talk shows in the US for decades because of its subtle political commentary. Just kidding, it's a show.
Do you think that I'm gonna take fashion advice from a drag queen?
Well, by the way,
so
who wouldn't want to bake a lesbian wedding cake? So back off me.
The View is a round table of 4 to 8 women from different backgrounds, sharing their political beliefs and opinions about the current events of the day. And it's live, so yeah, strap in.
As the tone and the voice of The View changed, so did its hosts.
It's so controversial, it's become a revolving door of characters. One's hired, she's not here next season.
Girl, please stop talking. Please stop talking right now.
Are you hearing that?
Some people look like animals.
Let's take it back to the 90s. Daytime talk shows were king. You had Oprah, you had Ricky Lake, Maury Povich.
In the case of 5-month-old Avion, Mike, you are not.
At the same time, CNN and Fox News were starting to create the pundit culture of talking heads just yelling at each other on TV. And in comes The View. It was created by TV legend Barbara Walters in 1997.
So Barbara wanted the show to be 4 women sitting at a table, different backgrounds, different ages, young, old, cross-generational.
The View was the perfect storm of daytime talk show shenanigans and political pundits. As a kid growing up watching daytime talk shows in the 90s, the guests were the stars. The crazy strippers on Jerry Springer, that's who you tuned in to see. But The View switched things up, where suddenly the hosts were the stars. The View talked about everything from pop culture, celebrity gossip, to politics. The View's original lineup was on fire. You've got Barbara Walters, TV legend, Joy Behar, comedian. You've got Debbie Matenopoulos representing the young people, Star Jones, a lawyer, and of course, Meredith Vieira, my favorite, who is the moderator. She was there to be a sensible voice and to cut to commercial when things went bananas. So at first the show got pretty good ratings. It wasn't Oprah Winfrey level, but it also wasn't really taken seriously by the mainstream. On Saturday Night Live, they famously spoofed the show.
Some may call it a train wreck. We call it The View.
As a bunch of women just talking over each other, and half the cast was played by men.
30% of Americans think President Clinton should resign. Star, what do you make of this?
Yes, I am a lawyer.
The SNL spoof was funny, no doubt, but it was also evidence that the show, which was highlighting women's voices, wasn't taken seriously. Here's what a New York Times critic said the week after the show first aired. The idea of women talking to one another on daytime television is not exactly radical. The idea that those women should be smart and accomplished is still odd enough to make The View seem wildly different. It's so condescending. As a show, The View did such a good job tackling big, difficult conversations. However, the hosts got a little heated. When Barbara Walters first came up with the show with her longtime producing partner Bill Getty, they envisioned a segment called Hot Topics. This would be where the cast debates real issues, everything from religion to politics, hot button issues like abortion, police brutality, and of course, this is where the co-host got into some trouble. So because of the show's live format, a lot of the controversies came from the actual co-hosts. In 2006, Star Jones announced on the air, a few days ahead of ABC's official announcement, that she was leaving the show.
And I will not be returning as co-host next year.
Barbara Walters' face says it all. And just a few months after that, in August 2006, the co-host flew off the rails once again. One of the first big blow-ups on the show came from Elisabeth Hasselbeck.
She was one of the most polarizing hosts that ever sat at the table.
She was the conservative voice, famous for being on Survivor, and she's going head-to-head with Babs and Joy.
That's my personal opinion.
So you would say that a girl like 12 years old who just started menstruating, who's been raped by her father or her uncle, should proceed to term because that's a life.
I'm saying no, listen to me. I'm saying there is value in that life. You want that same government.
Elizabeth, calm down, dear.
I can't. This makes me so upset, Barbara. I know.
After this fight, Hasselbeck tore up her cue cards, stormed off stage during the commercial break, and then years later, the audio from the backstage moment was leaked. And oh boy, Elisabeth Hasselbeck has a sailor's mouth.
That. I'm not going to sit there and get reprimanded on the air.
I know.
What the Like, I'm not going back out there. Write about that in the New York Post.
Elizabeth supposedly never swore, but the show may have driven her to this depth. The show quickly became a revolving door of hosts. By 2007, 10 years after it initially aired, we had 10 different hosts. If you can name them all, you can join my trivia team. One of the biggest personalities they had on the show was Rosie O'Donnell. During a heated discussion in May 2007, she went head-to-head with Elisabeth Hasselbeck over the Iraq War.
Do you believe I think our troops are terrorists, Elizabeth?
I don't think that you. I don't
Do
think
you believe that? Yes or no?
Excuse me. Let me speak.
This is not the Rosie O'Donnell from Sleepless in Seattle.
That's right. It's not true.
It gets so tense that two of the other co-hosts, Sherry Shepherd and Joy Behar, try to walk off the stage and try to cut to commercial break.
That is cowardly.
It's directing the show. Let's go to commercial. Let's go to commercial.
I need a drink of water.
But there is no stopping Hurricane Rosie. The best part, Rosie O'Donnell had already announced her departure from the show, but after this blow up, just a few days later, she was out of there, weeks before her official exit. This is what makes The View so great. You're watching HR happen live on TV.
It became extremely uncomfortable watching those two battle it out over politics, and the ratings were through the roof. But it got a bit too intense and too uncomfortable for the audience, and so they scaled back.
Then in 2009, to spice things up, The View decides to bring on a male commentator co-host, which went about as well as you'd imagine.
Hold it. Listen to me, because you'll learn. All right?
Conservative commentator Bill O'Reilly joins the show for a discussion about a proposed Muslim community center to be built near the 9/11 memorial site.
Let me break this to you. 70% of Americans don't want that mosque down there, so don't give me the weebies. You want to bet on that?
It got so cutthroat that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar walked off the set in protest. At this point, the network just kept courting controversy, and they brought in Jenny McCarthy. The former singled-out host and Playboy playmate was famous at the time for her anti-vaxxer beliefs. McCarthy's initial casting was so poorly received because at the time, she was famous for pushing propaganda against childhood vaccines. McCarthy only stayed on the show for a year, and when she was fired, she compared it to the Red Wedding episode of Game of Thrones. Jenny, no one died. And even some of the long-term hosts started leaving. In 2013, Elisabeth Hasselbeck and Joy Behar were both allegedly pushed out because market research found them both to be too polarizing. You think? Isn't that the whole point of the show? Barbara Walters made her final appearance in May 2014, and the network desperately starts to find a co-host that has her same gravitas.
Barbara, you have raised the TV interview to such a high art. The only person who's truly qualified to interview you is you. But you can't do that, can you?
Yes, I can.
They bring on Nicole Wallace, a former White House communications director under the George W. Bush years, but she only lasts a year because it turns out she's not controversial enough. In 2015, after a brief stint over at CNN, Joy Behar rejoins The View. But the network might have been correct that she was too controversial for The View. In 2015, while discussing the Miss America pageant, Behar asked why one of the contestants, who was a nurse, why she was wearing a doctor's stethoscope.
I'm a lifesaver. I'm never going to be just a nurse.
Yikes. The backlash was immediate and intense, and nurses online took to social media with the hashtag #NursesUnite. It got so crazy that Johnson & Johnson, maker of Tylenol, pulled their sponsorship from The View. Behar had to walk back her comments and apologize. Behar also had a lot of beef with Meghan McCain, the conservative commentator who was also the daughter of Senator John McCain. It got so bad that at one point McCain called Behar a bitch on air.
Sacrificial Republican every day. Well, I'm just trying to.
Here's the thing.
Don't feel bad for me, bitch. I paid to do this.
She left the show for 3 months for maternity leave, and when she came back, Joy Behar was brutal to her.
When I was on maternity leave, you missed me so much. You missed fighting with me. Don't act like you missed fighting with me.
I did not miss you.
This was so ice cold and unnecessary, and later in her book, McCain said this was the exact moment she knew she was leaving the show.
I'd like to weigh in.
So nasty.
Whoopi, can I weigh in?
Okay, guys.
It's not uncommon for a host on The View to come under fire for controversial and sometimes racist remarks.
Which happened kind of a lot.
So Raven-Symoné came under fire when she seemingly defended former Univision anchor Rodner Figueroa after he said that Michelle Obama looks like a character from the film Planet of the Apes.
Some people look like animals. Is that rude?
Girl, half my family does. Am I right, America?
I look like a bird.
Half my family.
So can I be mad if somebody calls me Toucan Sam?
Then in 2009, Whoopi Goldberg defended Mel Gibson during his notorious voicemail scandal Oh yeah, you remember this one.
And if you get raped by a pack, it'll be your fault.
Whoopi basically argued that she knew him personally and that he's not a racist.
You can say he's being an bonehead, but I can't sit and say that he's a racist.
Whoopi, listen to the tape. Whoopi landed in hot water a few years later with her own remarks about the Holocaust.
It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
The EGOT winner received so much backlash that the president of ABC News at the time, Kim Godwin, suspended her for 2 weeks. This is why we all love The View. You never know when a controversy is gonna pop up and who's gonna leave next. In the end, controversy is what works for The View. They created 27 years ago a format that is now being ripped off left and right. You've got The Talk, The Real, The Five. Everyone wants to be The View because of their super successful controversy courting panel. After all this time, The View is on top of the ratings too. They're #1 in their time slot and they get about 2.5 million people tuning in a day. You know, I think it's only fitting to close this out with the same line that Barbara Walters used to end every episode of The View.
After all of this, we hope that you will
Take a little time
to enjoy The View. You see what I'm saying?
And 27 years later, we still are.